I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is a sad clown.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha Packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom. All right, to our millions of listeners out there, just kidding, I don't know how many we actually have, but if you're listening to this, you're tuned in for a really good interview because I've got a great leader, great man, and a good friend of mine. I think just over the years getting to know this guy in the gloom. And he's also, he's got one of the cooler call signs, I think, after his name. So we'll do that at the end here. But I got my man, Dirty Bird. Was recent site Q at the district. So Dirty Bird, man, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Would love to just have you tell us how it all started. So who EH'd you? What was the first workout like? And then how did you get the name Dirty Bird?
Yeah. So hopefully most people know Tugboat out there. Tugboat actually EH'd me. I work with Tugboat and have known him for a while. We went to law school together. So I'm a lawyer from the district area, which is shocking. But there's quite a few in the area. But no, he's told me about F3. It was post-pandemic, and he actually was queuing the district Murph. And I think it was July.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, I think you should check this out. And so I got up on a Monday morning, was ready to go, and it was lightning and raining. And I was just like, no way I'm going out there to do this. So I sent him a text. And so it was a false start in July of, I guess it was 2021. And then he reached out to me again and said, hey, I'm going to queue again at the Murph in October. And I made it out, which was interesting. He kind of told me what to expect, except for the cell phone and the name-orama and that type of thing, which kind of threw me for a loop. But there was probably 10 guys there, and I still laugh at this story of my first workout because Tugboat told me where it was. I was actually 5 minutes late. So he told me where the actual workout was. So those who've been to the district Murph, you start at the Rockbrook parking lot, but then you go to a playground that's kind of off 105th. And so I was like, well, I miss these guys. I better just drive down to the down to the playground. So I park, get out, and everybody's like mid Merkins pull-ups. And Tugboat stops the workout and was like, hey, this is my friend Brent. He's he's an FNG. I had no idea what I was getting into. Yeah, I think Khakis was there and gave me the typical Khakis welcome. I'm just like, who is this jokester? But no, everybody was very welcoming, and I started the workout, and I thought I was in shape, but I quickly learned that I was not. And I don't remember much about the name-orama, but I do remember walking back to my car down to the playground, and it was kind of like the walk of shame because I just felt absolutely miserable. And I was like, man, I'm glad I'm walking away because if I throw up in somebody's front yard, nobody will see it. But but so Tugboat, I think Tugboat wanted me to have my first workout when he was queuing, because I'm pretty confident he had my name. He'd been thinking about my name for a while. But I got Dirty Bird because I grew up in Metro Atlanta. I was born in Omaha and came back, but I grew up in Metro Atlanta and was a Falcons fan, or am a Falcons fan. And Tugboat, for whatever reason, really likes Ludacris. And the Ludacris lyric about the Dirty Birds kicking for three. So he gave me the name Dirty Bird, and I've loved it ever since. Put it that way.
That's awesome. I love that story, and it's cool that you came out to one of his cues. So did you know what the Murph even was? Like, were you familiar with that workout? Okay.
Not at all. He described it to me, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not sure I can do 100 pull-ups. But he explained to me I could modify, but no, I had no idea. And I was running before, so I was like, I'll be in decent shape. I'll be able to hang with these guys. And that Murph worked me over pretty good.
Yeah. Do you remember your second post? Like, where'd you go after the Murph?
When I first started, I think I just went back to the Murph occasionally just because it was familiar, and it's relatively close. And then I started going to Battlefield Coliseum, the West Side, stadium workouts, and realized the Murph was a little bit, at least in my opinion, a little bit more challenging than some of the other ones. So I slowly worked into the West Side area workouts.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you think from like just a fitness perspective? So you were running before. Have you seen any sort of improvements or been able to maintain, or what's been your sort of fitness growth over the last 2 years?
I've definitely reached different levels and way more in shape than I was doing it on my own, for sure. And I ran probably 3 times a week, maybe. And they weren't crazy distances. It was more just a get out of the house type thing. And in that 2020-21 period, it was really, I'm going to go run just to get out of the house, break up my day type of thing. Would usually be a lunch run, that type of thing. But as far as overall fitness and strength, it's been a massive increase, and and all the positive consequences of that. Mental, also just when I go on a longer run, I feel more confident that I'll get it done at a good time, and so on.
Yeah.
So much better space or better place after 3 years at F3.
Heck yeah, man. And have you dabbled in any of the other, so we've got running AOs and we have, weights and fitness challenges and the halfway stuff. I mean, what's been your kind of participation in those? Have you had a chance to do kind of a different flavors of things?
Yeah. So for a while I was EHing a high school friend, and he lived down by Exarban. So Wednesdays were great. So heavy metal, I was doing heavy metal for a while, and really enjoyed that. And for whatever reason, he kind of went his own way, which happens,
Yeah.
And I kind of went away from lifting weights and gone more into more running. I don't know if that's just because naturally it's easier for me to run than to do a bunch of weight workout. If I gravitate towards, Paradise and some of the pre-runs near, the West Side areas, just because it fits my body type, and it's easier for me. Or if it's just, and frankly, we'll get into this later maybe, but like the pre-runs, I've enjoyed way more than my first year. I was pretty hesitant to wake up any earlier or just go on a run with 3 or 4 random strangers. But now that's something I kind of look forward to, is getting to know people through those pre-runs, because it's a lot easier to, at least for me, to kind of have a conversation for 40 minutes rather than doing some kind of station workout where you maybe mixing it up with other people. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good segue. It's funny you mentioned all the lawyers in the group, but when you started, so you knew Tugboat, did you know anybody else, whether maybe from law school or just from the community?
Yeah. Yes. That was one of the crazy things for F3 and probably got me accelerated more in more different locations, was I would always just happen to run into somebody that I knew. And for the first 6 months, I was like, oh, I didn't know you do F3 as well. And so, it went from, I went to Creighton for undergrad, so I ran into Big One. I had no idea Big One was involved. I wasn't active on social media, so I wasn't really paying attention on what people were posting, but saw him at Golden Spike. And then I found out afterwards that he was like, he planted the flag and was pretty involved in leadership early on. But that was one of those run-ins, like I hadn't seen this person in 20 years. It was just kind of this random thing. And then Tin Cup is my neighbor a couple houses down. So I knew him from the neighborhood, but I had no idea. He's like, oh, you're doing F3 too? Is like one of those type of things. But yeah, then, Toadstool. Oh man. Lansbury. I knew them from law school. So you just run into these folks, and same with, Creighton undergrad too. It's just kind of every once in a while you run into them. And then Sarpy connection. I've known Baby Shark since like, not high school, but right after high school. And Sweet Roll was actually my college roommate. So
crazy.
I known him. We're in a fantasy football league, but I've known him for 20 years. And it was just like, he popped up. I think he sent me a text and was like, I saw you on one of the Namaramas. It's just kind of like, oh man. So it was a great way to kind of rekindle some old friendships too, just being in the Omaha area. So
that's awesome. What do you think it is about, and maybe it's just there's a lot of lawyers in town, but what do you think it is that draws lawyers to F3? Is it the schedule, or is it
I think a lot of it's the schedule. I think a lot of, or at least, it's a stressful job. So people like to exercise as a kind of a healthy way of dealing with that stress. And we're in the district area. There's just a high concentration of folks that live within 4 or 5 miles of each other. But yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of a head scratcher. I remember going to a workout. I think it was either Mess Hall or the Coop, but it was definitely Swanson. And we looked around, and there was like one non-lawyer there. I think it was big. I can't remember who it was, but he realized, he's like, "Holy cow, I'm the only non-lawyer here right now." But I don't know. I don't know why lawyers tend to gravitate towards F3. I think it is a little bit of the scheduling and just the appeal of working out. Yeah.
Well, Dredd, one of the founders initially of F3 Nation, right? He was a lawyer, and we'll have to share, so Pony's not here today, but when he and I interviewed Dredd and Dark Helmet a while back, and Dredd actually sent him this book called The L Source. That's basically like the Q source, but for litigators, for lawyers.
Okay, interesting.
And kind of a fascinating resource that he put together. We'll have to see if we can get his permission to share that, because we certainly have guys that could benefit from it.
Yeah. Well, and also, I guess maybe one of the other reasons too is Brazilian. I mean, Brazilian was one of the Redwoods, and he's a lawyer. And I don't know if you were part of the Rockbrook Pool recruitment area, but that was a heavy recruitment area, and so maybe it has a lot to do with Brazilian kind of starting that recruitment and getting folks to. Yeah,
he definitely has probably the biggest branch off the family tree there when we look at F3.
He's my great gauge, I guess. He pulled in tugboat. So.
Yeah. Well, what about so you mentioned pre-running as a way you've found to build relationships. Anything specific about the pre-run? Do you think it's just the time and space to have a deeper conversation, or? Yeah,
I think so. There's something about pre-runs where people tend to, especially if you pre-run with somebody, 3 or 4 times, and you get past that kind of initial conversation of like, oh, you have any kids, all that, and you get into a little bit more deeper understanding of what is driving people or what issues they're dealing with. But yeah, for whatever reason, it just seems like pre-run environments tend to get people to kind of open up a little bit more. Especially because it usually breaks off to like one-on-one or a group of 3 conversation. Where people just seem to kind of open up, and it's just an opportunity to get to know people a little bit more, other than in a group setting at like a cafeteria where you got 20 people or 10 people sitting around. So I guess I haven't really put my finger on it, but it seems like the pre-runs are really good conversations.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love the pre-run conversation, and also try to, every once in a while I'll run next to Slow Pitch, and he'll tell me to just stop talking because he doesn't like to talk while he runs all the time. But what about, have you been able to participate in coffee, or has schedule kind of been tight for you there?
Yeah. So, and maybe this is common, but when I first started out, maybe in just introvert and worried about timing, and I've got small kids who need to get taken somewhere in the morning, but didn't really participate a lot in cafeteria. I mean, maybe West Side, I'd go over to the grinder, or the bilge grinder, but just didn't do it very often. And then I would say year 2 started going more, especially in the summers where the schedule is not quite as hectic in the morning.
For sure.
So Khakis Cafe for sure was always a place I like to go. And then Village Grinder on the Tuesday, Thursday workouts. Stories on Friday is great after Golden Spike. So definitely opened up to more coffees, but now I've got to catch myself sometimes and be like, I got to get out the door. And of course, how could I forget Paradise? Wheatfield's coffee.
Yeah, that's the best coffee shop around, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, just don't tell Khakis, right? Right. What about so there's a lot of other second F events, right? Happy hours or obviously Q Source, Queen Service, Shield Lock, any of that sort of stuff. Have you found your way through any of that?
So happy hours have been a little sporadic. I've enjoyed, just because Sweet Roll is the self-proclaimed Q for Fairy Nectar. So I've gone over there a couple times, and that's kind of nice because I don't see the Sarpy guys as much as I probably should. So that's kind of fun to go and hang out with them. And then Q Source, I would say the last 8 months, I every once in a while would go to Q Source after Paradise, but I've really put an effort into doing that more often. I started Q there a couple times and really enjoyed that conversation. And so I try to be a regular as far as Q Source on Wednesdays at Paradise to the extent I can. And then I would say, last 3 months we started a Shield Lock, which if you asked me at the beginning of my F3 journey, if I wanted to join a Shield Lock, I would have been kind of weirded out, but absolutely love it. And the group of guys is, they're very motivated about like they have a pretty good vision of what the Shield Lock should be and what we're trying to accomplish. And it's been very valuable.
Yeah. For maybe guys that don't know, what would you say, what is your vision of the Shield Lock, just as an example, maybe to guys that are trying to get into that?
Yeah. So I was kind of clueless about what a Shield Lock is supposed to do when the group asked me or the individual asked me. And, we shared the summary or from the website, but really it's kind of holding each other accountable on, what certain goals you have. If it's, just the physical, like workout, I want to improve my time on a 10K or whatever. I want to run X amount of miles, or I'm going to do a race. But also just like work goals, family goals, talking about time management. There's only so many hours in the day. How do you split it up between time for yourself, professionally, family, and those things? And then, things that come up, just whether it's an injury, stress in the family, some kind of illness, things like that. We just kind of have those conversations through text message or when we have our pop-up workout. So it's been really good and helpful. There were certain members of the Shield Lock who were like, all right, this is what I think we should do. And it really kind of, instead of just, 4 dudes texting each other, really kind of got some kind of organization to it or vision to it. And so that's awesome. That's been really good. Yeah, it's been great. That if you are interested in Shield Locks, like accessing the website and letting that be kind of a starting point about discussing what you want that relationship to be is I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Well, I think, so here we are, right? September, sort of Suicide Mental Health Awareness Month. And a lot of times with guys, we don't ask for help. And so I think, not everybody's open to asking for help in a big group. So you kind of create that smaller structure where maybe you do feel comfortable venting or asking, 1 or 2 guys for help with something that's challenging, as opposed to, sort of not having anybody to reach out to or not knowing where to even start, that sort of thing. So I love just creating that space for guys, right? We all, if we don't need it now, we will eventually, right, have something come up that we didn't expect or that's difficult. And so I think just being intentional, really, really good job on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to take credit for that because I was definitely a follower in the show. Like, it's like, yeah, that sounds interesting. I'll check it out. And the group has a really, I think, positive way of even if you're not, feeling like you want to communicate or express it, somebody eventually, expresses, hey, I'm dealing with this, I'm struggling with this. And then it makes it a little bit easier for the next person to say, that reminds me of something I'm dealing with. And so it just facilitates a little bit of stress relief or just communicating some of the challenges we're facing.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I'm curious, you mentioned a little bit maybe the first year Q Source you did not attend, and just curious, was it intimidating or you didn't have time, or what was maybe the barrier there for guys that...
If you ask me year one, I'd say it was time, but I think that was probably an excuse. Like I don't know if I necessarily saw the value, so I didn't make time.
Yeah.
So I was like, I got to get going, and my family expects me to be here or there or whatever. So now I need to be a little wise about using that time. But yeah, I think it was a little bit of intimidation, and I mean, I was a little freaked out about F3 is like, this seems kind of cultish. There's like code language, and some people go all in right away, and I'm kind of a little hesitant about just being like, whoa, I'm gonna do all these things. So it was a little bit of intimidation and not really understanding the true value of it. I think it takes time for some people to kind of warm up to the idea, and I was definitely one of those people who's a little guarded about jumping in, reading this manual with code words and all this stuff. And I tried to describe F3 to people on the outside, and it's funny how you start describing it and it's like, yeah, it sounds like an intense workout group, but that's not where, at least in my opinion, the real value is. It's really more about improving men as far as leaders and encouraging them to take time to kind of reflect on who they are and who they want to be. I mean, that's really kind of what Q Source is reflecting on yourself, get right. And then if you are in a position, which pretty much everybody's in a position to be a leader, whether it's, professionally or in the family or in the community, what things do you need to focus on, to develop yourself as a leader and, help your community and those types of things. So yeah, it starts as a workout group, but it's so much more. So it just took me a long time to figure that out, I would say. Put myself in situations like Q Source or cafeteria or pre-runs to figure it out.
I think for a lot of guys too, right? Like you start out kind of waiting for like, okay, when is the hook? Like, when are they going to ask me, like, like I'm showing up and it's a free workout, but when are they going to ask me like for money or for whatever, like it's almost too good to be true, right? You're kind of wondering like, okay, what's the catch here?
Exactly. It's like, all right, when is the the branding start and those types of things. But so it took a while. And I mean, for me too, it was like the whole Name-a-Rama and then posting it on, Twitter or whatever, X. That kind of freaked me out at the beginning because I was like, what? Like, why do they need to know my name and all this stuff? But then, 3 months into it, you see the value. I was like, oh, well, I can see these people are over there. I should go check out that exercise or that site. So then again, it's just you being educated on the value, putting your guard down a little bit.
Yeah. How well do you think we're doing with, I guess, sharing, like, teaching F and Gs about that stuff? I guess as I'm hearing you talk, it sounds like maybe guys have to figure it out on their own, so that it takes them a little longer. But I don't know. What have you seen with some of the F and Gs you've been around?
Yeah, I think I was probably more reserved and slower to get integrated than some of the F and Gs that I see. And really, I mean, F and Gs, it kind of depends on who's EHing them as well, like how much information they give. Instead of like, hey, we're going to go work out at 5:30, you should stop by. Or instead of like, hey, this is going to be a really hard workout, you need to, just say, feel free to modify, like nobody's paying attention. You don't, no one's judging you. And then, you're going to get a weird nickname. And like, people are going to ask you to get in the middle of the circle and talk about yourself. And so, Tugboat was good about that part. He gave me a heads up about the naming and things like that. I don't remember it because I was about to pass out from the exercise, the workout, but I'm pretty sure it happened. It is on video. But yeah, I think it may be more, if we were going to improve, maybe the site cues, just kind of walking through a little bit afterwards when they're initially there, and just the encouragement to show up again. Just be like, I know you're going to be sore in a day or two, but trust me, you stick with it, you're going to enjoy it. You'll be happy you did. And just kind of explaining that. And then, I don't know, I mean, you got to be careful a little bit of overwhelming new people too, with like, oh, we've got 15 other things. And I mean, that's a great thing about, in my opinion, about F3 is so many opportunities to lead, but it's also can be tracking it all and, accessing and figuring out what everybody's doing is a little overwhelming too. So if you're FNG, it's like, holy cow, these guys spend all their time doing this stuff. Like, it could be a little much too. So I don't know if I even answered your question, but I'm just
no, you did. I think that's perfect. I mean, I think, so we just launched a site this morning in Bennington, and we were contemplating, do we add a Q source with it and all? And we kind of just said, you know what, let's just start with the workout, right? Let's not, as we go into this new community, let's just get guys to show up to the workout. And then sort of as time goes on, we can add, you can always add to it. But to your point, if somebody shows up and there's 10 different things to do, it's a little overwhelming. It almost makes you feel like, well, if I have to do all the things, then I don't have time, and right. So I think we want to be careful of that, but I love that point. Right. Curious your thoughts. It sounds like, from a male sort of relationship standpoint, or that second F perspective, things are going really well, but how do you see it? How do you feel today in terms of like being connected to other guys?
Yeah, I know. I think it's fantastic. And F3 was kind of the thing I needed that I didn't know I needed, if that makes sense. I mean, especially the timing of post-COVID, not going to the office. I'm fortunate enough to work with some people that like I just enjoy. Like, I call them my friends. They are my friends. I mean, Tugboat, and then there's some other folks that we hang out with, after work and things like that. And but even with that, like having those connections with the male community or other people in similar life situations, where you get in the morning and you're able to kind of just talk about some of the issues that you're dealing with. And it's, again, my path, like rekindling old friendships has been fantastic, but also the creation of new friendships to a much deeper level than I would ever have gotten if it was just like, hey, let's go have a couple beers every once in a while and just check in and see how things are going. I mean, I know what fellow F3 guys are going through, or PAX members, that I would never imagine I would have that depth of knowledge. And that's because of F3. And it's just a better understanding of your peers, which, is a really powerful thing. I mean, I really think it's a powerful thing.
Heck yeah, man. What about your family, like your M and your 2.0s? Do you think they've noticed any difference maybe in stress level, or how do they see F3?
Yeah, so like my F3 journey, my wife's F3 journey has been interesting. She's always been very supportive to a certain limit. Like when I start, because she also likes to work out in the morning, so I got to be aware of that and conscious of that I'm not being a morning workout hog. Where I'm like, I'm gone. You guys stick around with the kids. But she's been very supportive. I mean, she saw the benefit. I wouldn't say instantly, but like right away. I have annoyed her many a times when I'd like talk about how hard the exercise or the workout was and things like that. She's like, I don't care. And then, of course, she makes fun of the, the nicknames. that she still can't get her head around or make sense of. But no, she has been very supportive. She has definitely seen the changes and the benefits. Just my mental, my overall mood, just not agitated, not grumpy. I mean, I still get agitated, I still get grumpy, but I feel like I've become better at acknowledging, hey, I'm stressed about something, and it's not necessarily my wife's fault or my kid's fault, and just kind of channeling it, and taking a pause and say, all right, like, it's not healthy for me to go yell at somebody or freak out when they're really not the source of the stress or the agitation. So
yeah, that's huge growth, man. I love hearing that. I think we all kind of go through. I love that you said it's her, your journey and her journey. I think it's kind of depending on your and what their schedule is or what they like to be doing that time of the morning. You kind of fluctuate and learn together, right? It's like a new. I think one of the struggles too is like if you were a guy that maybe didn't have a ton of friends before, and now all of a sudden you have friends that are not her, the husband of her friends or whatever, like the Free to Lead book says, then it kind of adds it's a different layer, right? It's sort of like now you're introducing them to your friends' wives instead of the other way around. It's kind of an interesting dynamic there. But
yeah, for sure.
Curious. Go ahead.
I was going to say she's been great. I will say, she gets very frustrated when I feel like I need to introduce her to every F3% I've met. Yeah. Like, seen a guy at the grocery store and be like, but yeah, she gets a kick out of the whole thing.
Yeah. Are you going to Vallis this weekend?
We are. Yeah.
That's always one I have to remind myself to stay with my wife and not leave her behind while I go talk to all the guys. So
yeah, exactly. It's go walk around as a family unit, stop by, say hi, but yeah, definitely help with the kids.
For sure. Yeah. And I can only imagine that 90th and Center Hy-Vee there and all the different F3 guys you run into there, or wherever you grocery shop. Maybe.
Yeah. You nailed it. Yeah.
And you're there. Well, tell me a little bit about, I'm curious on the third F piece, sort of what's been your background from a faith perspective, and then maybe how have you grown in that area over the last couple of years?
Yeah. So I've been a regular attendee of church for a while. I'm fairly involved in our church, but I will say the church that we go to does not have a lot of what I would call my peers, like people of our age, kind of like male community worship groups and things like that. So that was certainly a piece that I had been missing. And I would say that the spirituality part or the faith part of F3, I've enjoyed it. I don't know if it's really, I kind of view it as a different way of practicing my religion. It wasn't like I wasn't practicing religion beforehand, and then all of a sudden F3 brought me closer to Jesus or God or whomever you worship. But I've enjoyed it, and I don't know. I guess I'm having a hard time articulating it, but I feel like it's a supplement, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you go to church, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I go to Trinity Episcopal Church downtown. So when we moved back to Omaha, we lived in kind of the Midtown area. So we started going to Trinity and just got involved there. So it's
nice. So you still make the drive down there?
Yeah. It's not too bad. We're close to the interstate, so we drive down and go back and forth. But.
Yeah, no, similar here. We're going to St. Mark on 90th and Blondo when we were living sort of in West Side or Loveland, and we still go there. So it's about a 30-minute drive on Sunday, but we love it. We've got a good community there, a good pastor. As you think about sort of the third F pieces of F3, I often hear like guys will say like F3 is sort of my church or like a supplement there, but talk me through like, I don't know how like COTs or maybe just the prayer at the end, how have those things helped you over the last few years?
Yeah, so I'm going to break those down, I guess.
Yeah.
The COTs, to me, that certain COTs were kind of like a light bulb went off a little bit when I heard some very, like, I'll always remember specific COTs, and I won't get into who or what it was about, but when I heard those, I was like, okay, this is a different organization. This is different than a workout group. Like there are some very personal, powerful things shared there that made me realize this is more about, community and improving ourselves and being vulnerable and putting yourself out there so that, hopefully people learn from your story or can relate with your story and feel more comfortable, expressing things that have held them down. So the COT, when I first started, I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. This is like a weird pep talk, and then I got to the ones that were real, like people really putting their guard down and sharing some not dark stuff, but just stuff that they wouldn't feel comfortable sharing in a regular community or in just a work office community. And so that was really powerful as far as me buying more into F3 and really believing in the value and the power of it. And then the prayer. I've also heard some really profound, beautiful prayers. And although the COT and the prayer are in my mind, separate, they really can work together. And where you kind of share an experience and then you share praise to God to, either, the better situation that you're in or helping you find, the strength to pull out of that situation. So those can be very, very powerful. Sometimes I've fallen in the trap of leading an exercise or leading a workout and focusing more on, I got to put effort into make sure it's a really good workout. And then the COT is like, I don't know, maybe I'll find an inspiring quote, something like that. But when you're really dealing with some heavy things or weighed down by some stress, that COT can really be the thing that lightens your load, same with the prayer. And then just kind of, as you prepare both of those things, hopefully find a little bit of, guidance on maybe how you navigate that in the future, or, after the workout conversation with folks saying, hey, I hear what you're going through and, I've dealt with it, or, so on. Here's some encouragement, those types of things. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate you breaking those two things down. It is interesting just how they flow together, but they're two totally different things or pieces of the puzzle. And I think just being in that setting after a workout and praying together as a group for whatever reason has this profound kind of impact, right? Like even if you don't expect it, right? It's just sort of, being in that space. I think God is a relational God. But tell me, from your perspective, one of the things, I guess, in my opinion, I think one of the things we do for men is we give them a space to be vulnerable and just be themselves, right? Whatever they're going through. Have you found an opportunity within the group to be vulnerable, maybe in a COT, or have you been able to share some of those deeper things? Is that something you've gotten to, or are you still kind of maybe more on the introverted side, kind of guarded a little bit? Where are you at today?
Yeah, no, today I'm definitely more comfortable sharing the vulnerability. And it took me a while to go through, listening to COTs and also doing them to get to that point. Like, I'm not a type of person who's going to, on my first or my BQ, just be like, all right, here's all the skeletons in the closet, and it's also a little bit of timing too, like if things are going good, it's just going to be like, hey, I feel good, or, but if you're really going through some struggles, or for me, for a while, it was, just, work stress and dealing with kids and just making sure that I am not bringing work home to a detriment to my family. and that's challenging sometimes. It was definitely challenging when you're, one bedroom away from somebody who's doing online school. It's just, it was a tough time that way. But yeah, also, struggles with your M. I definitely feel more comfortable sharing those now, knowing that, other people have shared those stories, or, what they've been dealing with, and knowing that it's not going to be, broadcasted throughout the community and stuff like that too. So yeah, it's definitely something I feel much more comfortable with.
Yeah. What would you say, any insight or advice for a guy that maybe is hesitant to share, any encouragement, or maybe they just need to wait till they're ready, but any thoughts there?
Yeah, I would say, it's got to be the right time for you, right? Like, I wouldn't force it, and let it be the right time. But also know that we've heard a lot of things in those COTs, and you're not going to shock anybody or disgust anybody or anything like that. You're only going to get warmth and comfort and encouragement. Nobody's going to walk away and be like, I'm not pre-running with that dude.
Yeah.
Like, the judgment's not there, and everybody gets that, who's in that COT or has been in that position of giving the COT. So I guess my words of encouragement would be just, go for it. If you have something on your chest that you think you need to share, or you think you will feel better sharing, then do it. You're only going to get positive support.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal advice. I love that. And it, like you said, it's timing, right? And, but have courage and share at some point, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it took me more than a few cues to get to that point where I was like, all right, I'm going to actually talk about things that I'm really struggling with, rather than, something that inspired me. And that's, to me, that's where the real, God's work is being done through this group, is when you hear those, like those COTs that I talked about, where you're just like, I'm going to remember this forever, just because how vulnerable this person is being, and open.
Yeah. Hey, tell me just your thoughts, so we've got our mission statement, right? We're trying to invigorate or reinvigorate male community leadership. And one of the ways we do that, right, is with the Site Q role. What was your experience as a Site Q at the district? How did that go for you?
It went great. I mean, I feel like the Site Q, and this is no disrespect to any of the previous Site Qs at any MRF location, but the MRF is a little bit easier because you when you recruit somebody to lead it, the workout's set, and there's no post blast. I mean, it's a pretty easy lift, and the district MRF, I don't know if I would have done it if there wasn't a second Site Q, just because I knew I was going to be out of town, and there were some Sundays that I was getting in late. But Invictus, who's I am so glad and grateful that I got to co-Site Q with Invictus, who's a great person. And frankly, I don't know if I would have known him on the same level if we didn't share that experience. And so it was a great year. And, we passed the shovel in August. I don't think it's been a month. Yep. It's only been a month. I was a little surprised that how much I missed it.
Yeah.
The first non-district MRF workout, I went to go grab the shovel and plant it, and I was like, oh wait, I don't have this anymore. So, I still go work out on Monday morning, so I'm not all of a sudden just like jumping off the district MRF. But yeah, I missed it. It was a great experience. I enjoyed the leadership. And one thing I think F3 is really good at is giving the opportunity for people to lead. And I enjoyed the experience, but I also understood the value of it is sharing the opportunity to lead too. So you can't just constantly run a site,
Yeah. Well, you guys, the thing I think most people don't realize about the MRF, right, is we do put some pressure on you guys, right, with Labor Day and Memorial Day, and then depending on where the 4th of July falls and different holidays. I mean, I think there's a lot of flexibility you guys are called on to have in adjusting those schedules. But the Murph has always been one. We try to funnel some VQs through there, right? Were you guys able to do that, or tell me about just being able to support the PAX as a site queue? How did that go for you?
Yeah. There were quite a few VQs, and I think we've got a VQ next Monday. So if you're listening to this, hopefully this comes out quickly. But it's such an easy way to get a VQ, because it's like, look, all you need to focus on is the COT and the prayer, and I guess a pre-blast, but we can help you with that. And so it's just a very easy first step into leading. And I think once somebody goes through that VQ experience and realize that it's not as daunting as one may think it is, it really gives them the confidence and the encouragement to kind of, okay, I can take on more of these at different sites, and everything will go just fine.
Yeah. Heck yeah, man. No, I think my VQ was, I did a VQ at Red Wings, which was initially called the Murph, which, that didn't scale very well. And then I did a co-Q with Tonight Show, but the Murph was just sort of gets those jitters out, right? Counting cadence and assigning it, asking another guy to count cadence. I mean, some of those sort of basics of leading a workout definitely are good with the Murph. Really good opportunity for guys.
Yeah. And I had my VQ at District Murph, and I think the hardest thing was just keeping track of the five core principles. Yep. And I still struggle with the mission statement for some reason, but I guess I could put it on my phone.
Well, it's different online than it is in the free to lead. So I don't know if that's intentional from Dread and Dark Helmet, but in one place it says invigorate, and the other place it says reinvigorate.
I know. So I had always just gone online, so I was just like, why is everybody screwing this up? Like it's invigorate. Yeah. It's not reinvigorate. It's invigorate. Yeah. But each their own. Feel free to modify, right?
Curious what, as you look at sort of other sites or maybe just new guys and kind of how big we've gotten as a region, what any advice or thoughts that you have for us as we're trying to continue to lead and keep things going?
Yeah, the one thing that I like I said previously, the opportunity to lead, and if somebody has a good idea, the encouragement there, and you can't just be focused on, like, I couldn't imagine F3 being as successful as it is if it was very focused, like we're only going to do Murphs. Like, how repetitive that would get, and people would just be like, I'm going to go try something else. So, you have these various, like disco is a perfect example. I was blown away by how many people, I mean, I played Ultimate Frisbee before. I wouldn't say that I'm passionate about it, but I showed up and I was like, holy cow, there's 35, 40 people here, because it was just something kind of fun and new and different. Still be able to get out there in the morning, exercise, and have some fellowship with guys, but it wasn't the same thing over and over again. So kind of being open to those new ideas, I think just kind of keeps things fresh, keeps people interested, and keeps them coming out. And the expansion, I mean, holy cow, the last year and a half, it's just been nuts. I mean, the west side, I'm having a hard time keeping track of all the locations, and I need to pull up the map. Which is great. I mean, that just shows that there's new people who are excited about starting up something of their own and taking ownership in it, and are reaching out to other non-F3 guys to get them showing up and coming to their neighborhoods and things like that. I mean, I remember Tater Tot and I were talking about this. I remember when Main Stage was a pop-up, and it was like, well, I get it. I mean, there's not really a site anywhere around there. And then he was telling me the numbers that they constantly come through Millard South. And it's like, whoa, like that's crazy. Yeah. So the expansion's been fantastic. So, I mean, I think the recipe's right. It just keeps going and going, and which is fantastic, because it's just more and more people or more and more men are realizing the value, the great things that come through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to think about like retention. How do we keep the new guy engaged? And I think you kind of touched on something earlier of just like give them some information so they can get engaged. Don't overwhelm them, but like focus on where are you going to go next, right? I'll meet you there, or some of those pieces of just like what's the next step instead of getting so far out ahead of all the second and third F and all of the things. Just sort of partner with them on that next one.
Yeah, well, and I think the most effective way really is if you have somebody that you enjoyed a conversation with who's an FNG, and just kind of reaching out to them and saying, hey, love to see you next week, something like that. Just be like, you stick with it. I think you'll really see the benefits, and just have that personal kind of connection. I think it's more effective than blasting with a bunch of social media.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm curious if there's anything else maybe that we didn't cover that you would want to share with guys that are listening.
Man, not that I can think of off the top of my head. I just, for those who are listening out there, I just extremely grateful for what F3 is. I mean, I guess start with wait time and bringing it to Omaha, but I have a hard time comprehending what my life would be like if I had not gone out to F3. Maybe I'd be going to a gym or whatever, running by myself, but I've just really enjoyed the last 3 years. It's been incredible. And I've lost maybe some hours of sleep just getting up super early for pre-runs, and I got to remind myself that my body needs some sleep too. But yeah, it's been fantastic. So if you're listening out there, if you are listening and you're not in F3, I highly recommend you look us up online and check it out.
Heck yeah, man. And anything that that you're maybe going through now that would be helpful for guys to encourage you on or be praying for as we see out there in the gloom?
Yeah, on the the family area, I've got a daughter who's getting into the preteen
oh wow,
yeah, mood, and that's a challenge. And her and I have always had a really good relationship, and she's daddy's girl, but my M and her go after it sometimes, and then I'm in the middle trying to mediate or resolve the issues, and knowing if I pick one side, I'm going to be wrong on the other side. So that's a challenge. For me, I also have a son who for some reason likes to push my buttons. And so when I talk about not losing my temper, it's usually because of something that he's trying to do. So that's always a challenge. So, I'm sure hundreds of F3 PAX members have gone through that, and just, appreciate your words of encouragement as I try to not yell at him. But no, other than that, I never really thought about it, but I heard, I'm not sure who it was. Maybe it was Lansbury talk about a little bit of a slump if you're a site queue, and then you're kind of like, well, I did that, and now I kind of have a void as far as like responsibility or where I can put my attention or time in F3. I don't know if I've fully felt that void yet. The shield, I think the timing of the shield lock has helped. We'll see what happens in the winter. I'm a little concerned that my activity will dip down in the winter since I'm not a site queue. So if you don't see me around as much when it's cold out, shoot me a text and say, get your ass out there.
Absolutely, man. It definitely can relate. And I'll be reaching out in a few years with the preteen.
Well, hopefully I have some good advice to give. Well,
yeah.
So far I don't feel like I have any right now.
For sure. Well, appreciate your time. We'll wrap up with a little name-orama. I'll go first here. Brandon Flehardy, 37, The Plague.
Brent Meyer, 42, Dirty Bird.
Dirty Bird. Awesome, man. Hey, appreciate your time. This was great.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah.